I want to do a couple little talks on the things people do to bypass having to do some of the hard work of recovery. This sometimes gets referred to as spiritual bypassing, but don't think of it in a religious context. It's very much just things people do to avoid some of the hard work of recovery. In the past, 3-4 years ago, I did a series on spiritual bypassing from the within the Christian tradition that people do, and I attempted to deconstruct a lot of that. But I want to go beyond that to just all forms of bypassing. And why I want to do that is because I think we live as humans with a natural avoidance of pain. And so when it comes to recovery, we tend to want to find an easier, softer way, a quick fix, a magic solution, anything that promises that we don't have to do hard work. And so there's really, I think, 3 things that people are trying to avoid and why bypassing is so popular with people. So first is that very hard work. And so they're looking for God, faith, a magic fix to just make it all done. Secondly, they're avoiding the very uncomfortable emotions that are part of dealing with trauma. So they don't want to sit in very painful emotions. They don't want to process very painful emotions. And then in regular life, they don't want to have to deal with this limbic brain that has these powerful emotions that are often negative. So they want to bypass the whole emotional world to find recovery without that. And then the third thing I think they often want to avoid is just the length of time, the slowness, the messiness of the process. They want it done quickly, instantly. They don't want this to drag on for years and years. And so it's a very appealing idea that there might be a quick solution, an easy solution, an instant fix. And so many people fall into it. A number of writers have talked on this topic. It's probably not talked about as much as it should be, but Ingrid Clayton has written this: spiritual bypassing is a defense mechanism. The use of spiritual or self-help language or practices to avoid, suppress, or bypass emotional pain, unresolved trauma, or uncomfortable inner work. Spiritual bypassing is not mindful spiritual growth. Rather, it is using spirituality or spiritual language to hide from, negate, or invalidate genuine emotional material or trauma. So well said. Somebody else has said this: spiritual bypassing is a very persistent shadow of spirituality, manifesting in many forms, often without being acknowledged as such. It means employing spiritual beliefs to avoid dealing in any significant depth with our pain and developmental needs. Aspects of spiritual bypassing include exaggerated detachment, we're going to talk more about these, emotional numbing and repression, overemphasis on the positive, anger phobia, blind or overly tolerant compassion, weak or too porous boundaries, lopsided development. So cognitive intelligence often being far ahead of emotional or moral intelligence. Debilitating judgment about one's negativity or shadow side, devaluation of the personal relative to the spiritual, and delusions of having arrived at a higher level of being. So what I want to talk about today is just some of the methods that are used by people to bypass this emotional, painful, hard work, messy process. So number one, and this isn't just used within religions, it's used outside of religions as well, and everything happens for a reason. And so you can think of the person that is raped, their spouse cheats on them, their child dies, and they just go, Everything happens for a reason. So this painful event, well, it's part of a plan. So if it's part of a plan, then I shouldn't be upset. So they're bypassing being vulnerable, admitting and validating their own pain, their own hurt, their own anger, their own loss, the injustice of the situation, just by bringing in some type of metaphysical narrative that says, all part of a plan, therefore be positive. And this, to me, is quite common, but does so much damage. So here's what I want you to understand up front, why bypassing is so harmful. It never accomplishes what it promises. Until you look honestly at a situation, you're not going to heal. As long as you misdiagnose, minimize, justify, rationalize, deny, you never are going to heal. You might feel a little better in the moment, but you're not going to heal. The second one is the live in light only, or toxic positivity. You just need to be positive. You just need to be thankful. You just need to be in a good mood. You just need to be happy all the time. And so it's basically saying that we only have good vibes here and we don't allow negative emotions, because negative emotions become contagious and then everybody else gets down. And so it's your responsibility to be very positive all the time. And so they put negative emotions as being unspiritual or bad. But that's very much like a complex trauma family where the kids had to be happy all the time. They couldn't be honest about how they were really feeling. They had to deny that or explain it away some other way. So they never were able to process their negative emotions. They had to suppress those negative emotions. Those negative emotions didn't go away. They just were suppressed, and they did so much damage. And so the fear, I think, of people is, well, if you allow negative emotions, then they're going to spread. Then the person's just going to wallow in self-pity. No, you're processing the negative emotions in order to resolve them, in order to heal them, not to sit in them indefinitely without any resolution. So there's a real fear around this, that negative emotions can't be resolved, and that comes very much out of a complex trauma childhood thinking, that they attempted to resolve these negative emotions but never could, so now they think they're not going to be able to do it in adult life, so always be positive. And the second thing is the contagious part is very much part of that codependency family dynamic, that if you're negative, I can't detach from that and say, that's your stuff, I'm not going to take it on. No, I'm going to take on your stuff. And so it's blaming you for some of the codependency issues in other people. Third one, and we've talked about this one, but it's forgive and forget. And so somebody hurts you greatly. So again, you're sexually abused, you're raped, you're cheated on, you're lied to, and they go, oh, just forgive and forget. And basically it's putting so much emphasis on the need to forgive that it's basically go to forgiveness now, bypass dealing with all the feelings that came up by being betrayed and abused. And so it's looking for a shortcut that if I just forgive, then magically everything else will go away. But what we know is when you get deeply hurt, you can't force yourself to forgive. Oh, you can say, oh, I forgive, and try to act like it, but you got so much unprocessed hurt, injustice, grief, pain, that it's still affecting you. If you work on going through this anger, going through the confusion, going through the depression, going through all of the different emotions and hurts, and you validate them and work through them, you will get to the point where you're able to let it go. That's true forgiveness. What this type of forgiveness that they're talking about, forgive and forget, is really kind of deny the hurt. It's a form of denial, but it's dressed up to sound very spiritual, very righteous. But it does not work. And so again, the need to go through the process of dealing with the limbic brain, but as you do in a healthy way, the good results begin to happen. You're able to truly let go. Another one is be the bigger person. And again, this is an attempt to bypass the limbic brain. So if I was truly an evolved human being, I would rise above this. But what it's really saying is, I need to act this mature person, this persona, this hero child. Therefore, I must suppress all other emotions that don't fit the right image. And so it's basically, you've painted an image of what a mature person looks like, and now I got to suppress anything that doesn't look like that. The problem is this mature image that you've painted isn't necessarily totally human. They're a person who only has a couple of positive emotions. They're a person that basically has cut off and shut down parts of themselves to try to look mature. So this again doesn't work, but it's people again trying to bypass being human, the limbic brain, all of the messy emotions, and just act put together all the time and saying, oh, I'm being the bigger person. That's how they want to spin it. Now, having said that, there are times when you as a person need to be able to say, okay, I'm really grieving right now. I just lost my dad, but my kids really need me today. So I need to be the bigger person in the sense that I can put my grief on hold. I'm not suppressing it. I'm not trying to bypass it. I'm going to be there for the kids today and I'll grieve tonight. Or I'm in a conflict situation and part of my limbic brain would like to go into fight mode and attack and disrespect this person. But I need to get to my cortex, to the more mature brain, and choose a healthier path. That's a good sense of being a bigger person. But the way it gets used often in bypassing is I need to fit this image and shut down everything else that is human about me. Another one that is so common in complex trauma is insight is healing. So a child in complex trauma could not resolve their painful emotions. So many of them escaped to their head and everything became academic. Everything became about finding solutions, thinking through logically everything, getting lots of knowledge, and they became a walking brain. And so their whole idea was if I can figure it out, then I got it fixed. But it really is a form of bypassing having to deal with emotions. It's like, who needs emotions? Just figure it out. Just get all the information. Just see all the connections, and then you're healed. No, you're not. You still got to deal with your body and your emotions. You cannot bypass that and truly heal. Another one that is very common is the selfless service bypass. So it's the person that basically goes to, I should be here for others. If I am to be a loving person, I need to put my needs aside, my desires aside, and sacrifice for others, serve others, take care of others. Really what it is, it's a way to justify fawning and codependency. It's a way to justify not paying attention to yourself, but always being occupied with others and their needs, and neglecting yourself and not taking care of your needs and not even feeling your needs because you're so busy helping others. So it's a way to avoid living with yourself and caring for yourself by caring for others. And so this person, they get validated. People love them because they're so helpful. But often, in their supposed love for others, they have zero love for themselves. And bottom line is, when you don't truly know how to love yourself well, you don't really know how to love others well. Another one is the non-attachment bypass. So it's really taking some Buddhist teaching and kind of taking it to an extreme. So basically it's attachment and desire cause suffering. So don't get attached to anything. And it really confuses healthy human attachment, which we all need, with unhealthy human attachment, enmeshment, clinginess. And so it's detaching in an unhealthy way so that you don't have any connection, you don't have any intimacy, you avoid any interdependence, you avoid healthy vulnerability. And basically, I don't need anybody, just myself. I just need God. I don't need people. Really what it's saying is they're not attached even to themselves. They've felt abandoned by others. They've abandoned themselves. They've never connected to others, so they don't want to connect with themselves. And so they are a missing connection, but they're trying to avoid having to learn connection by saying, who needs connection? Connection only leads to pain. You just need yourself. And so the very core need that we all have, that is the source of life and joy, which is healthy connection, they're trying to bypass because somewhere in their past that led to pain. And so now they just never want to go there again and risk getting hurt again. The next one, gratitude. You just need to be grateful all the time. That for many becomes a form of denial. And so I've heard people starting to get honest about the pains they're dealing with, the frustrations, how life is very hard for them at the moment. And somebody pipes in and goes, oh, you just need to be grateful. And what they're doing is trying to minimize what they're going through, deny what they're going through, get them to only focus on positives and not be honest about this part of their life. Or they go, others have it worse than you, so you should be grateful. So now, again, they're trying to minimize their pain. So it's a form of invalidation, a form of denial, and just trying to have this grateful attitude all the time without dealing with all of life's stuff that is painful. And again, it doesn't work in the long run. Another one that is out there is the manifestation bypass. And basically it is, if I just have positive thoughts, I create a positive reality. If I just have positive thoughts, bad things won't happen. If I just believe that all this good stuff will happen, I can manifest it. If I just believe I'll be wealthy and find this partner who's beautiful, it will happen. So basically what it's saying is, I can just magically, with my mind, create my reality. Now, there's an element where my thinking does create elements of my reality, but this is saying I don't have to do the hard work of working hard, of using healthy tools, of going about dating in a healthy way. No, I just manifest it into existence. And then when stuff bad happens to them, they go, oh, I must have attracted this bad thing. I must have some bad energy. I just need to get rid of that, and then I'll get back to good. So it's looking for a magic thing that's happening in my brain to just create a good life without me having to do any work. Another one that I hear sadly occasionally is people that say, oh, I've grown to the point I've transcended my ego. I don't struggle with my dark side anymore. I don't struggle with stuff anymore. I've risen above. And so it's like they acknowledge I had to do work in recovery, but you reach a point where all of a sudden you're fixed. You no longer have to deal with all of this stuff. And I go, yeah, you can get to a point where, yeah, you don't have to deal with it with the same intensity that you have in the past, but you never are totally done dealing with stuff. And so to go to a point where you go, I've risen above, I've transcended all my dark side, all my shadow side, that's denial. That is almost like a narcissist just focusing on this image that they think they've created and now denying all the parts of them that would make them look bad. It's still shame trying to feel good about itself. And so if I had to keep struggling periodically in life with all kinds of different things, that makes me look like I'm not a very good person. I need to have arrived. And so that is another form. And then just some of the ones we mentioned in the Christian one, but it's very common, is pray it away or have faith. And so something bad happens, just pray about it. And then somehow magically God will fix it, or just have faith. And somehow magically it'll be fixed. You're struggling with addiction. We'll pray about it, or just trust God. And so what it's doing is looking for God or a spiritual fix to meet all of my 12 needs, to somehow magically be the only tool I need to meet emotional needs, physical needs, relational needs. It's a real common bypass that many use. And then another one is, God's in control. So as God's up there, there's this chessboard, God's moving pieces around. So when bad things happen, God's in control. God must have allowed that to happen because he's got something good in mind. So don't feel the emotions around the bad thing that happened. Just go, I'm trusting God. And so again, you just avoid being honest about how all of this stuff is affecting you. And then finally, just some of the Bible verses that get used. It's God will meet all your needs. And if you think about that for very long, what does that mean? Does that mean I sit on my couch all day and food magically shows up? Does that mean I never have to sleep because God will somehow meet my needs? It starts to break down if you think about it carefully. And then forget those things that are behind, as if it's in the past, it doesn't affect you, whereas the context of that verse is a very different topic. Cast all your cares on him because he cares for you, as if you don't need anybody else. You don't need to talk to anybody else. Or God will fight your battles for you, so you don't need to do anything. God's going to take care of it. Or be anxious for nothing. So never allow anxiety. Just be positive all the time. And we've deconstructed those in other talks. So if you've been using any of these bypassing things, I'm going to look next time more into some of the damage that it does. But what I want you to see is it's going to hinder your growth. You won't be able to learn the tools necessary to truly grow if you're hanging on to a bypassing tool. And so part of recovery is coming to accept there's hard work. You got to deal with painful emotions and the trauma. And it's a slow, messy process. And if you're trying to bypass that in any way, any of those three, you're only hurting yourself. Well, I hope that was helpful. If it was, please like, subscribe, share, comment. We really appreciate it. Till next time, have a great day.